right, 99.9 Punk World Radio FM. You guys already know what time it is, and right here we are joined by lead singer and founding member of that's right, not one, but five-time Juno-nominated band, the Cancer Bats. We got Liam up in the building. Liam, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. What's up, man? How are you?
Doing great, man. Best I can possibly be. I know you were actually on tour recently. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Cancer Bats are still on tour, or you guys just finished up a tour. But either way, I have to ask, how is the tour going? Or, of course, how did it go?
We just got home. We just finished doing some dates. We just had like a bunch of dates in the U.S. where we were playing with Norma Jean on the West Coast. We did some headline shows, and then we finished off playing some shows with Guar. And it was
sick.
awesome. Yeah, so some old homies, like we've toured with Norma Jean before. We toured with Guar like a bunch of times, so it was really fun. And then got to play with some like different like new bands and stuff like that on some headline shows. So yeah, the whole thing was really cool.
And I do know as well, like actually, I think it was this past summer, you guys actually did a surprise show at Blues Fest. I think Neil Young canceled or something like that, and then you guys, the Offspring, pulled up. And I will admit, I was like so close to actually wanting to go, but it was like last minute, and I already had Motley Crue tickets, and I was broke, and I was just like, damn
it. Yeah, it was us, Silverstein, and the Offspring got added, and it was, I guess, either Neil Young or somebody in their crew or a bunch of people in their crew got sick. I wasn't sure like the story, but it was basically we got asked like if we could jump on this, and we were playing the next day with Billy Talent, so we were going to be in the area. Everyone was already flying into Toronto, so it kind of worked out perfectly. But we had band practice lined up the day before, so we ended up learning Cinnamon Girl for the show. So we did a cover of Cinnamon Girl at Blues Fest, and then we also did it the next day with Billy Talent, and yeah, it was awesome.
I gotta say, hopefully the next Blues Fest you guys actually make it back, because I will admit, when I saw that lineup, I was like, it made me want to actually, like, no offense to Motley Crue, I love Crue. It made me want to literally be like, okay, could I sell these tickets last minute? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it was cool, and it's really fun too because we're friends with Silverstein, so them being on the bill too, like it was rad to just have a random hang with some buddies. And like I said, we were already like we had the van already rented to go to Billy Talent. Like we had like everything lined up, so it was like the easiest like extra show you could possibly add.
But also, before, Blues Fest dates and festivals and multiple tours, I got to take you back, man, to May of 2004, where yourself and Scott Middleton, formerly of At the Mercy of Inspiration, you both came together and formed what the world now knows as the Cancer Bats. I got to ask, man, how did you and Scott actually first meet and, of course, come together and decide to form the world-renowned Cancer Bats?
Well, we had known each other. So me and Scott met through his band At the Mercy of Inspiration. I think I was singing in a band at that time called Vincent Black Shadow. And we were playing like a bunch of shows in Southern Ontario. And we were basically just like, man, your band rocks. Like we should play shows together, like kind of thing. Became friends. And same with Jay Schwartzer, who like plays bass for Bats. He was also playing in a really rad band called Hope to Die, and we were all kind of like playing shows together. And like he was living in London, Ontario. I was like between Waterloo and Toronto. Scott was from Mississauga, so we were all like in this cool Southern Ontario sort of scene. So Jay didn't join the band right away, but he definitely was like he helped us record our demo. We were like debating whether to have like a second guitar player, and we were going to ask Jay to be that second guitar player, but he was also playing in this really rad band called Cover. So we were like, we can't really break up Cover because they're like sort of sounded like Leatherface, like Hot Water Music kind of stuff. So we're like, oh, this band's really cool. Like Cover should still do its thing. So then me and Scott were just like, oh, we're going to start Cancer Bats, but it's not going to be like full time really. And then all these opportunities sort of started coming up, and Scott's band At the Mercy of Inspiration basically like stopped happening. So we were like, okay, we have a van. We we have some tunes. We really want to play music. So let's just record a demo and go on tour.
And I got to say as well, you guys definitely made a phenomenal decision because obviously you look at you guys now. And I got to say, at the mercy of inspiration, I did hear about Scott's band back in the day, but I got to say, man, definitely a great choice was actually just forming the Cancer Bats.
I mean, Atmore was like a real, I would say if it wasn't for all the work that they kind of had done ahead of time. So they had toured to the East Coast. They had toured a ton around like Quebec and Ontario. So when it came time for Cancer Bats, we kind of like could hit the ground running because of all the work that like At the Mercy had done. So like on our first East Coast tour, it had like Scott from At the Mercy of Inspiration's like new band was like billed as like Cancer Bats. So definitely like we call them Atmois is like the acronym, but like shout out to Atmois. That was definitely what like helped kind of like get Cancer Bats going really quickly. That and like we're like really good friends with Alexis on Fire, and like friends with like the Silverstein guys, friends with like the Comeback Kid guys. So by the time like Mikey came on board to play drums, that was also like we had all these friends that were just like, let's go. But again, that was from like all of us being in other bands that like kind of like opened the door for us. So yeah, right place, right time maybe, but also a lot of hard work building up.
And also, speaking of hard work, January of 2005, so right at the beginning of Cancer Bats, you guys released a demo that ultimately led to Distort Entertainment signing you guys. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us the story behind this legendary demo, and of course, how did it ultimately lead to you guys actually getting discovered by Distort Records?
So again, that was the demo that Jay helped us record. So Scott went to recording school. Jay also went to recording school. So we all kind of like worked on that record over Thanksgiving, I want to say, of 2004. And then we did our very first like East Coast tour. And at the end of it, there was like a big show that we were playing in Lee's Palace. And so we invited all of our friends. We like packed it out. And Scott and Greg, who ran Distort, Greg was already interested in At the Mercy of Inspiration. So when he was like getting invited to that show because Scott was like, oh, I don't think Atmo's going to be a band anymore. Like, this is my new band. And we knew that Greg loved Entombed. So we were like, this new band, we just want to sound like Entombed is basically like what we told him, which is true. We all love Entombed and like Iron Monkey and like all that kind of stuff. But it was just really funny to be like, I probably loved Hatebreed more than I loved Entombed at that point. You know, just like those funny like moments. So yeah, then Greg saw us at that show and he basically signed us after that like first show. And then that's when we were like, okay, we got to get like Mike into the band and like get like a real, well, Mikey, I was just like, we need to find a drummer. And then Mikey literally like emailed me the next day. Was like, hey, if you're ever looking for a drummer, I want to like move out of Winnipeg. And I was like, perfect. I called him immediately. And I was like, I need you to like move here right now. Like, we're writing a record. We just got signed to Distort. Like, we're going to go on tour. I need you to move here right now. And it was funny because we didn't end up, we then like wrote Birthing the Giant over the next like year, basically, from when he moved. Because we only had those songs off the demo. And the classic, like, you get signed and the label is like, how close are you to having like a full length? And we're like, so close. We had like no songs. We had like barely like written, you know, we had like 100 Grand Canyon and Pneumonia Hawk were like the two songs that we had written after the demo. So it was like we were on the right track, but we still had to write enough music to like put out a full length. And Greg was like, you can't just like use the song from the demo. So we had to like we had to convince him to let us use Shillelagh on the album because we were like, this song's too good. We can't just like leave this on this demo.
Yeah, you got to love it when labels do that. They're like, we want an album, but you can't use anything off the demo. It's like, dude, come on, man. Like, at least meet us halfway. Give us one or two.
Yeah, it was like the demo that we like pressed 500 copies of. You know what I mean? Like, no one knows what this record is. But I think also Greg at that time, like, he didn't think that we were gonna like end up like we were able to license that record like around the world. Like it got put out in like the UK, Europe, Australia, Japan. So I don't think Greg also kind of like knew, like I think he thought we were going to be a bit more of like an Ontario band for a bit, but they worked out.
And also, because I know Birth of the Giant, a legendary album, and I know some fans that are watching this, they're going to be pissed that I'm skipping this album, but I got to go to my favorite album, man, which is the album that followed up April 22nd, 2008, Hail Destroyer, man. I got to ask about this legendary album. And of course, man, like, what is the story behind this? A classic record, bro.
I mean, that record's crazy. Well, I guess like once we put out Birthing, we toured like nonstop, like around the world. Like we just like lived in our van. We were just doing tour after tour after tour. So the summer of 2007, we were like told by Greg that we had to like write a new record because he was like, we're getting all this momentum. We need to like write another record. And for us, there was a lot of stuff that we wanted to like fix because obviously Birthing was like the first thing we ever wrote. I could like barely sing. Like I was like losing my voice while we were recording it. So now that we had toured, we were kind of like, we wanted to do something that was like more representative of the band. Cause I think everybody realized we were a lot heavier when we would play live. So we were like, we need to make like a heavy record basically. And like still have fun, still have those party songs, but like we were like we're a hardcore band, and you can't really necessarily tell that from like all these songs. So I felt like Hail Destroyer was like our time to kind of like step up and like fully kind of explain like what the vibe of the band was. But we didn't have a lot of time, so we were writing that record. We were jamming like in the summer. We were all in Toronto. We were jamming like 12 hours a day. Like just like 7 days a week. We were just like, we were under the gun. We just have to write. And at that point it was just Mike, Scott, and I like working on it. So we didn't even have a bass player. And then Jay actually came and jammed with us because we were like, we don't need a guitar player. We actually need a bass player at this point. So Jay came and jammed with us and kind of saw how like serious we were taking it. And was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we were like working on stuff. We did one more US tour. And then we were like, Jay, you need to come to Europe with us. So we did a huge like Europe tour. And that was like Jay's first tour. But we were still finishing writing the record while like we were on that tour. Like I remember we were doing demo vocals for like Lucifer's Rocking Chair in the like backstage of like the venue in Vienna, Austria. And we were on tour with Comeback Kid and Parkway Drive and This Is Hell and the Warriors. It was like this crazy package tour. But I remember I did the vocals so no one could hear the music. They could just hear my vocals for Lucifer's. And everybody like came in, like all the like Parkway and like Warriors guys and like the Comeback Kid. They were like, that song's crazy. Like that song's going to be so sick. And we were already like playing Hail Destroyer on that tour. Like it was just like felt like it was building up all this like kind of cool natural momentum. And then it was crazy. We like recorded that record like January, February. And then we literally went on tour. We went back on tour with Gallows the day that we finished in the studio. We drove to start tour with Gallows. So it was just like back on tour again, nonstop. So it was crazy.
And if I'm not mistaken as well, I remember seeing a 2009 movie called Splice. When I remember actually hearing briefly actually in that movie as well, I remember saying to myself, "Yo, that's badass." I just talking about that movie, man. When that actually did, how did you guys actually know it was in the movie? Because I do know there's a process. They can't just slap it in the movie. Like, did they reach out to the label or did they reach out to you guys directly?
Like more label stuff. And because again we were like on tour so much, there was just things that we would get. Because again, it was like 2008, 2009. Like it was still early days of the internet. Like, you didn't really have stuff like happening on your phone in the same way that you do now. So we would just like find out about stuff and then we'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like for sure. Like we just said yes to everything. So we got that and then like didn't even know that Adrian Brody was in the movie or like what was, you know what I mean? And you're just like, yeah, whatever.
And also as well, I do know in 2009 as well, around the same time Hail Destroyer came out, you guys got nominated for your very first Juno Award, which is like Best New Band. I was wondering if you
Yeah.
can actually just tell us a bit more about the Juno Award nomination, and of course, just being there, at the Juno Awards, seeing your guys' names, and with only being, I think, like a couple of years actually into being a band. It's such a surreal moment.
Yeah, it was super cool because that was before they even had like a punk and metal category. So we were like best new artist, but it was also when there was only a best rock album. Um, and like, yeah, we showed up and we were just like very much. I think it was us. I can't even remember the other bands, but it was us and the Stills. And I remember just being like, oh yeah, this feels like wild. But for us, I think Fucked Up got nominated that year. There was a couple, like Moneen got nominated for something. So there was a few like heavier bands that were like getting the nod from the Junos at that point, which felt really cool for just all of us. Like just even that, like Alexis and Comeback Kid, like those bands weren't getting nominated yet. And we were like somehow like you could tell that people within the Canadian music industry were like, we need to start including these things that are happening because it's like actually bands that are touring around the world. Like it's actually like stuff that's like starting to move the needle, but it's like not registering in this like bigger sense. So that was for us to like be at the Junos, and like I was like hanging out with the guys from like the Bare Naked Ladies. You know what I mean? Like it's just like those moments that are just like the Junos that it's like fun and like funny. It's like, yeah, we're all just like in this thing together. So that felt really cool to like kind of just like get our foot in that door.
I gotta admit, with the whole Juno Award stuff nowadays, man, it's so much different than it was back in like 2009. I mean, I don't even think they televise it anymore. I mean, I could just be totally out of the loop, but the
No,
Juno Awards to me isn't a big hype as it used to be.
yeah, they still do the televised side of things, but it was funny because well now it doesn't happen anymore. But MMVAs were like the bigger because we won an MMVA for French immersion, and so that was like the side of things where it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna win an award through Much Music for this really cool music video, and obviously like a song that's starting to like blow up, and kids are like into it and requesting the video. But then something like the Junos like isn't even, we're not on that radar. So that was why like fast forward to like Hail Destroyer was starting to like really kick open like some doors for us. So it felt kind of cool, yeah, again, to just be like in that mix. But Junos are still happening. Like Alexis just won the Juno for last year, like Voivod won. Like I think I don't know. For me, I still think it's cool that it's like they're acknowledging all these heavy things that are happening in music, like that there's a huge metal scene that's known around the world, but only in the last few years, like the Junos have started like acknowledging like any of that stuff. Like the fact that it took until now for Voivod to get like the nod is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's cool.
And also, as well, in late 2011, Cancer Bats actually formed into Bat Sabbath, where you guys actually toured Canada as a Black Sabbath tribute band. I have to ask about that, man. What actually made you guys decide to venture into channel your inner Ozzy and some Black Sabbath and just go on tour, man?
Well, we got asked to do that for like a festival in England. There was like we were playing this festival called Sonosphere, and we were playing in the afternoon in the tent, and it was Slipknot was going to be the headlining band that night. So they asked us, would you guys want to do like a cover set so that when Slipknot's done, for people that want to still keep partying and watching bands, you guys could play like a 30-minute cover set. And they were like, you can cover anybody. Like, it doesn't matter. And so we were like, okay, cool. We'll just do Sabbath, because in our brains, we thought that would be easy, which was like the funny thing. Like, and so we started learning this like 30-minute set, and it was so hard. Like, it's so crazy jazzy. There's like tons of parts. The vocals are really hard to sing. Like, it's way more complicated than you actually think this like easy rock and roll is. But it was really cool. So stepping up and doing it, it made us like better players. And then, yeah, so we played that festival, and this was like early enough days, like 2011, like people had camera phones so that they could like record a phone on their cell phone and like put it on the internet, which like before that, like you couldn't really do it. It would just look bad. It would sound like garbage. But like these videos then went up that night of us doing this Sabbath set in front of this like packed 5,000 cap tent. And it sounded awesome. Like if you look, like there's a YouTube video of it and it sounds really good. And so we finished that fest and then we flew back to Canada. That was like the end of our tour. And by the time we got back to Canada, we had all these like offers from promoters who had seen the like footage of us like playing. And so that's how the first like Bad Sabbath tour, it got booked like before we even like landed back in Canada. Because everyone was just like, this is so sick, like you should come. And originally we were just playing like really, really small bars and stuff like that, like little 100 cap spots. And now it's cool, like, man, so many years later, like we just did like a 3-week tour of the UK and like the shows were sold out, like the rooms are getting upgraded. Like it's such like a cool thing to be a part of now. And to just be like celebrating Sabbath with like a bunch of like people who also love those tunes. Like it's kind of the best thing ever.
And while we're on the topic of covers, man, I love Black Sabbath, but another legendary band, or in this case, hip hop group that you guys actually covered was the Beastie Boys' Sabotage, man. And as an avid Beastie Boy fan, I have to ask, what actually made you guys decide to venture into hip hop and actually cover some Beastie Boys, and of course, do Sabotage and the music video, man? Because the way you guys emulated that music video was 100%. MCA would be proud, dude. MCA would be proud.
Yeah. Well, that was like our thing. I mean, I love Beastie Boys. That's like one of my favorite bands. And Cancer Bats, before we did the Sabbath stuff, we do like a bunch of covers. Like we did like a Murder City Devils cover. We used to do like a Tegan and Sarah cover. We had like a whole bunch of just random songs that we learned and like could cover, but nobody knew them. Like we would play like the Murder City Devils song and like 2 guys would mosh. So when we were finishing touring, like Hail Destroyer, I was like, man, we should add something to our set, like a cool cover, but one that everybody knows, like not something that like 2 guys are gonna mosh to. So I like brought up Sabotage, and that was like a song everybody could kind of like agree on. So everyone in the band was down. It was like super easy to kind of like learn. And then we started doing it because we had all these festivals booked. So we were like, this will be just like a cool thing to add to like when we play Scene Fest, but when we play wherever. But then it started going so well that we were like, oh, we should keep this going. Like we should play it. Like we played a festival in Japan and like did the Sabotage cover there, and people were going nuts for it. So we were like, oh, we should probably record this, because we were working on Bears, Mares, Scraps and Bones. So then we were like, we should record this for the album. And then when that record was coming out, we were going to go on tour with Billy Talent. It was Billy Talent, Lex on Fire, Against Me, and us in the beginning of 2010. So Greg from Distort had this idea that he was like, okay, before the record comes out, this will be like a pre-album single that we could do for the tour. So we were like, for me, I was like, well, we didn't really change the song. So if we're going to do something creative, we should make this video like super creative, like totally like a Beastie Boys kind of style, like homage, but also funny, and like to kind of show that we like get it in this way. So then for us, like me and the director, Mark Ricciardelli, like came up with this like funny idea, because we were like trying to think about like if we could get the Beastie Boys to be in the video would be really sick. And like we didn't really have a connect to that crew or anything. So we came up with the idea, like Mark and I, of just like, well, what if we were like trying to find them? Like, what if we went to New York City to try and find the Beastie Boys? Or like, and then it snowballed, and we were like, okay, what if we made like the era like costumes, and like again showing that we're actual fans of the band, and then we're not just picking this song randomly. Like we actually know the like history of like all the different kind of vibes that the Beastie Boys have had. And then that was where the idea of like we're chasing them down and we're like trying to catch them. And that whole video came together pretty crazy.
I got to say, it definitely was 100% a great way to pay homage, man. I really like I said, the video, you put your own twist on it, but if you actually watch the video and put like the original Sabotage music video and the Cancer Bat Sabotage music video and kind of play them side by side, you'll see so many like so many similarities, but you'll see that you also made it your own as well, man.
Yeah,
Definitely
we have our
phenomenal
own.
video.
And I mean, huge shout out to like Mark Ricciardelli. Like he's such an amazing director, and like was able to take just like like random ideas and then like really put it into practice. So definitely Mark being like a huge part of that too, and also a fan of Beastie Boys. So that like side of things like was full circle too.
And also, aside from Cancer Bats, just for a moment, in 2012, you also became a member of the metalcore supergroup titled Axe Wound, where you guys actually released one album titled Vultures. I was wondering if you can actually tell us the story behind this group, and of course, what was it like working alongside fellow members of Bullet for My Valentine, Glamour of the Kill, Power Shifter, Rise to Remain, and so many others, man. Like, this was a super group in its own.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we had toured a ton with Bullet for My Valentine. Like since 2008, we've known those guys and like did a full U.S. Canada tour with them. We've like toured in Europe and like all over the place. So Matt was definitely like a homie, and I guess he and Jace, the drummer, who's now the drummer of Bullet, they had been working on this like metal record. Like they had the whole thing written, just the two of them. And then he reached out to me and was just like, "Hey, like I'm putting together this like metal band. Like you were the first person we thought of to front it because it's going to be more just like hardcore metal stuff." And I was like, "Sick." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm down." And he was like, "I'll send you the music." I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was listening to it and it was like crazy metalcore stuff, like, but also had so many like cool parts and like cool references. I was like, "Yeah, I'm super down." He was like, "It's going to be called Axe Moon." I was like, "Cool, I'm down." And then he was like, "Okay." And then he called me and he was like, "Okay, so you're in." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, I'm going to book you a plane ticket because I need you to come to the studio right now." And I was like, this is like a real band. So I like literally, he booked me a plane ticket like maybe 7 days after that phone call. And I had a week to write as many lyrics as I can for all those songs. And then I landed in England and we went and recorded in Wales. And I was in the studio like kind of in a daze. Like I was just like, wait, like not realizing like sort of what was happening. Like he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna get signed to Sony because that's who puts out like the Bullet record." And like M Shadows is like gonna do a solo on it. And then he like tweeted while we were in the studio that he had a new band. And then we started getting booked on like festivals like in Europe, like just off of a tweet. And I was like, oh, I just like agreed to a thing because Matt's my buddy. And like, I just like showed up and he was just like, "Hey, okay." And like, we were like recording like long days. Like I would go back to his house and be like working on lyrics before I went to bed. And like, we were writing lyrics and stuff, but it was such a cool like experience to just kind of like dive into this totally different project. And like, just like kind of take a departure from like Cancer Bats completely. Like there's times in the studio where I'd be like, "Yeah, I don't know what I should do." And he was like, "You should rap more." And I was like, "Okay." And so there's parts where I'm like kind of rapping. Then I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what to say." And he's like, "Man, you should just say fuck." "Yeah, you should just say fuck a whole bunch." And I was like, "Dude, yeah, I should say fuck." Like it was really fun at that same time because we didn't have any like expectations. So like, yeah, there's like a bunch of really like fun parts in that record, and like, yeah, there's me rapping. Like it was a blast. But it was really cool too because like all the guys who play on it, like when we ended up getting Mike and like Jace is like a phenomenal drummer, and Joe is like such a like rad bass player, but also like super fun dude. And obviously like Matt's like a total shredder, and like he does tons of cool vocals on that record too. So I don't know, yeah, it was a really fun experience. But it made for a crazy year because we put out Dead Son on Living and Axe Wound came out at the exact same time. So I think I flew on like 60 planes or something that year. Like I was just like, it was so nuts. I definitely was like the max of me like doing as much as possible. And Cancer Bats were like, we were able to get on all these festivals. So we had like a 3-month tour of Europe, like Europe and UK of festivals, just like back to back everything. And I was doing like double sets some days. Like it was crazy. Where we'd like finish, like when we played Download, Cancer Bats played 2 sets that day. And then I also went and played an Axe Wound set. It was just like the most, like I played with Axe Wound. I got in a golf cart and got driven across the festival to then like start warming up to like get ready for the Cancer Bat set and like change my clothes. And like it was such a crazy time. But it was cool, and it's kind of cool that it was just like such a snapshot. Like that record happened and then that was it. And then people are like, whenever we go to the States, like people bring records for me to sign, and like people ask about it all the time. And yeah, it's kind of cool that it just like lived in its own thing. Like I don't know if we'll ever do anything with it again.
But I gotta say, 3 shows, and man, I'm not gonna lie, like that right there, you're an absolute machine. You're a robot for that. I mean, I gotta say, Liam is not human. I don't know, man. I'm not a musician. I'm just a DJ, and I do interviews and whatnot. But I can only imagine doing like just three shows in one day, man. That would just. I think by the middle of the second, I'd have a brain aneurysm.
We did. Cancer Bats did 6 sets in one day once. We did it in the shape of a pentagram, like across London. We played like 6 concerts. That's how we kicked off the Dead Set on Living like album, was like to do this pentagram tour around London. So kind of after that, I was like, oh, I can do anything.
I mean, yeah, if you can do 6, you can do 3 easily. I mean, yeah. no question about it.
No problem.
But I have to ask, just before we move off the topic of that, because it just popped in my head about, doing 6 shows in one day. What does that do to your vocal cords, man? Like, do you have to rest for a day or 2 after that, or could you just go do another show immediately after?
Well, the crazy part was that the next day after that, we went and played a festival, and we did a Bad Sabbath show and a Cancer Bat show.
Damn.
So I feel like at that point, you're just like in the zone. You're just doing it.
And also as well, March 22nd, 2019, you were also featured on the Heart Attack Kids single titled Modern Decay that was actually released on New Damage Records. I was wondering, how did you actually get connected with Heart Attack Kids? And of course, what was it like just collaborating with them for this particular release?
I actually produced that whole record. That was like me, like being like sitting in the producer chair for the first time. And we had met those kids just from playing shows, because they're from London, Ontario. And they were just like, yeah, cool, like little 2-piece like band, like playing kind of like garagey punk rock stuff. Definitely like a really cool energy and like super nice. And then I got asked by a friend of ours, Corey, who was working with like, it was like a arts sort of like thing, like a mentorship kind of thing. And he was like, yeah, I'd really love to get you to like work with Heart Attack Kids. And he's like, and maybe just make some demos and like work on some tunes. So we worked on a couple tunes together in London, and it went like really good. And I was just like, oh, you know what? Like I'll send these tracks to New Damage and to like see if they would like be interested in putting out your record. So then I sent the tracks over, and New Damage was like, oh, this is sick. But also, like, we'll do this if you produce the whole record. And I was like, oh, okay. So that kind of became the whole project. So then we worked on the rest of the songs for that album. And yeah, we ended up getting like Eric Ratz helped like get some of the sounds. We recorded at Vespa. Like, it was really cool. And those dudes just like banged it out in like 3 days. Like Jared like sang all those vocals like in a day. Like, it was crazy. And then, and then I sang on one of those songs. So it was cool.
And aside from the music industry for a moment, you were also an owner of your own clothing line called Treadwell Clothing. I was wondering if you can actually tell us a bit more about your apparel. And of course, where can our listeners snag some swag today if they haven't already?
Yeah, I have a clothing brand that I do. I'm really into motorcycles. That's like my other thing outside of music that I'm really into. So basically almost 10 years ago, I started up this brand. I'm wearing a hoodie called Treadwell Clothing. And it was just like a way to kind of do something. Oh yeah, there we go. Shout out Treadwell. It was a way to do something like outside of music like just to be a complete kind of departure. And there is crossover, like obviously people who love heavy music also ride motorcycles. But for me, it was just like I was getting really into the motorcycle community and I wanted something to kind of do in that world. So there was all these cool like motorcycle meetups and shows like where people would bring in the bikes they had built and like kind of showcase them. And then there'd be brands. So I was like, oh, I could like do a brand and like have a reason to kind of go to all these shows, like go to hang out at these motorcycle meets and like do all this stuff. And then fast forward, I've been making like gear, like I make jackets and vests and pants and bags and all sorts of stuff, hats, hoodies, like everything. And then for me too, it was like a way to reconnect with like doing art. So I do all the like drawings and like all that kind of stuff. It's like as an excuse to like make art again and like have fun. But yeah, you can check it out, treadwellclothing.com or Instagram, like all that stuff. Yeah.
And 2 years ago, April 15th, you actually, Cancer Bats released their most recent 11-track studio album titled Psychic Jailbreak. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us the story behind this amazing record. And of course, where can we actually buy or stream ourselves a copy of it today?
So that was kind of an interesting one. Like everybody, we were stuck over COVID, so we couldn't get together. I've actually moved, like I live in Halifax now. Mikey lives in Winnipeg. Jay lives in Toronto. So we were like all over the place, band-wise. So we were like writing that record, you know, over the pandemic and like collaborating. And then, we were finally able to like get together. As soon as we could, we like went to a studio in Winnipeg where we record The Spark That Moves. And yeah, we laid down those tracks. And this one's crazy because this was actually like the first record that Scott like wasn't on. So over the pandemic, Scott was like, you know what? Like, I think I want to stay home and like focus on recording and be with my family. Like he has a son and he's married and, you know, was just like, I think the road isn't it for me anymore. So this was like the first album of like the three of us, like kind of moving forward and like keeping Cancer Bats, keeping it going and like wanting to, you know, make music. And we had already written like the record basically when Scott had kind of like bowed out. So it was like this kind of like change of the guard in a way, but it was cool to have people like really receive that album and a lot of, you know, OG Bats fans like still wanting to ride with us. So that side of things has been like super cool. And we've been touring it for 3 years so far, which is crazy. But there's some really amazing tracks. Like our really good friend, Brooklyn Doran, she sings on a song called Hammering On. And Brooklyn now tours with us as much as she can and comes and sings that song like live with us, which is like the best. Like it's such a cool, different like version of, you know, the Bats that you've known. So yeah, it's a really fun record. But yeah, people can check it out. Like it's on all streaming platforms, just Cancer Bats. And then you can buy copies straight from us, just cancerbats.com. And because we put out records ourselves now under Bat Skull with the help of New Damage in Canada. But yeah, it's definitely been it's been cool.
And one of the last questions I have, because when I booked you for an interview, people were hitting me up being like, look, you know, Jailbreak was a great album, but we want more. You got to ask Liam, will there be new music? Will there be new music? So I can't let the fans down. I got to ask the groundbreaking, the hard questions here. Will there actually be any more Cancer Bats? Like, are you guys actually like, we're currently working on new music, or are you just focusing solely on touring right now?
No, we definitely have been starting to write some stuff. Jackson, who's been playing guitar for the last like year and a half now, is also like writing with us. So it's Mikey, Jay, Jackson, and I working on new tunes. And it's going really good so far. Like we've definitely written a bunch. We're gonna get together in like January, February, March, and like keep working. It's actually really cool. I mean, just doing as much touring as we have and to have like people, like we have 7 albums, you know? So the fact that people still want to hear like new stuff and are confident that we're going to like put out some new cool tunes and like are excited about what we're working on, definitely like it's really awesome to be like in that position and to have like people still be stoked. Because, I mean, you could just listen to Hail Destroyer. You could just listen to Dead Son of Living. You know what I mean? You could listen to Spark That Moves. Like, there's great songs on Bears, great songs on Birthing. It's like a jailbreak. But to have, like, kids be like, oh, man, like, I can't wait to see what's coming up next is, like, yeah, it feels really good.
And aside from the new album that you guys are currently working on, of course, you just got off tour, so you get to kick your feet up and actually relax for a little bit. What is next for yourself and the Cancer Bats? Like, is there anything we happen to miss during this evening's broadcast that you still do want to touch on, talk about, or promote?
I mean, I think you did a great job. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we have some stuff coming up. We're definitely going to do some more shows. I mean, for us, I really like playing shows like around when we're writing. Like, it's a great way to interact with people. Like, we have such a cool relationship with our fans where they know that we're going to be hanging out at the merch table, that like they can come and kick it, or like even just seeing what songs like people are getting pumped, what part gets a good circle pit. Like, that to me is like really important in writing. So we have like a bunch of really cool shows that we're going to be doing next year in January and February, mostly like around, Canada stuff, but hopefully going to do some more like European touring and stuff like that too next year. So definitely like Bats aren't slowing down in any way. If anything, we're just like kind of gearing up.
And Liam, before we part ways tonight, obviously I know how to follow you on social media, and of course you guys are a very well known, like all around the world band. But just in case for people that aren't that social media savvy, that might not already be following yourself and the Cancer Bats, but this is a punk rock radio station, so I hope if you're watching, you've already smashed that follow button long time ago. But just in case, how can we actually follow yourself and the Bats across all social media platforms?
Yeah, I mean, Cancer Bats, like we run all our stuff ourselves. So even if you're reaching out, it's like me and Mikey that run the Cancer Bats Instagram or Facebook or any of that stuff. The YouTube page, like Mikey runs that. My personal one is just the Treadwell Clothing one. People can always like hit us up on that as well. Like, we definitely want to be very accessible to everybody and feel like, being connected to our fans and like to everyone who's part of the Bats family is like such a huge, like, cool part of doing all this. So yeah, cancerbats.com, Cancer Bats everywhere, just Cancer Bats. That's all you need to know.
And if you can't find it, simple Google search, scroll down a little bit, you'll see all the social media icons right there. Click on one of them. Have a field day. Follow on everyone.
DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to search on.
Even if you can log into your old MySpace, if you just smash a follow button there. I mean, I don't think you'll get a response, but just hit the follow button.
I don't know if we have the login for the old MySpace, but maybe it's still out there. I
will admit, man, I'm glad that MySpace. I love MySpace. Don't get me wrong, but I'm glad that my MySpace kind of is just lost in the void, because I was young when I started MySpace, and I uploaded a lot of weird photos that I'm just glad that now that I'm doing interviews like this, they just don't come to light. So thank you, MySpace, for just taking the personal profiles and hiding them. Thank you. Yeah. But no, Liam, I got to say first and foremost, man, thank you so much for giving not only myself, but the radio station airways a bit of your time, man. I've been a lifelong Cancer Bats fan, so the fact that I got to chop it up with the founding member, you know what I mean, vocalist, is such an honor, man. So thank you so much. Wow. Hopefully down the line we can make this happen again sometime soon, but for now, we'll definitely talk again soon, Liam. Thank you so much, man. Have yourself a wonderful night.
Yeah, cheers, man. You too. Thanks for having me on the show. Bye.